The gleaming halls of New Seoul Judicial Center hummed with activity as Tae-won Kim strode through the main entrance. His expensive white suit stood out among the more modest attire of those around him. At 17, Tae-won carried himself with the confidence of someone who had never heard the word no in his life. At least, not until yesterday. Floating beside him was JD-7, his personal legal eye. The small hovering drone projected the holographic image of a stern-faced man in formal legal attire. "Are you absolutely certain about this course of action, young Mr. Kim?" JD-7 asked, its voice calibrated to sound both respectful and concerned. "The colonial dependency statute hasn't been invoked in this manner for decades." Tae-won didn't slow his pace. "My father has billions. The Nebula X-300 costs less than what he spends on his morning coffee." The truth was, Tae-won had planned his 18th birthday celebration for months. All his friends from the elite academy would be there. He had promised them rides in what would be the most advanced personal spacecraft on the market. The Nebula X-300 wasn't just transportation. It was the ultimate status symbol among the youth of New Seoul's diplomatic community. "Your father's wealth isn't in question," JD-7 replied. "But the legal basis for forcing a parent to purchase a specific luxury item. Just do your job," Tae-won snapped. "That's what my monthly allowance pays for." They reached the filing desk where a clerk with tired eyes looked up from her terminal. She wore the standard gray uniform of the judicial workers, with her name, Ms. Park, displayed on a small badge. "How can I help you today?" she asked, her practiced smile fading as JD-7 floated forward and transferred the legal documents to her system. Ms. Park's eyes widened as she scanned the filing. "You're suing Ambassador Jun Kim, your father, for breach of paternal obligation under Section 47 of the Colonial Dependency Statute," JD-7 confirmed. "My client is entitled to appropriate transportation befitting his social standing." Ms. Park looked from the AI to Tae-won. "You realize what you're doing?" she asked, her voice dropping to just above a whisper. Tae-won nodded coldly. "My father can afford it. He just chooses not to. The law requires me to process all legitimate filings," Ms. Park said slowly, "but perhaps you might want to reconsider. Family matters are often better settled at home." "The home settlement option was rejected yesterday when my father laughed at my request," Tae-won said. "He told me to get a job if I wanted a spacecraft. As if someone of my position should work like a common laborer." Ms. Park's lips thinned, but she said nothing as she processed the filing. The terminal beeped its confirmation. "Ambassador Kim will receive notice within 1 hour," she said. "The initial hearing is scheduled for next week." Tae-won smiled for the first time that day. "Perfect." As they left the center, Tae-won's wrist communicator buzzed. It was his friend Hyun-ki. "Is it done?" Hyun-ki's excited face appeared on the small screen. "Of course," Tae-won replied. "By this time next week, I'll be showing you the controls of my new nebula. Your father is going to be so angry." Tae-won smirked. "He'll get over it. Besides, he's leaving for the Centauri peace talks tomorrow. By the time he gets back, this will all be settled." What Tae-won didn't mention was how his father had looked at him across the dinner table yesterday. Not angry, but disappointed. Jun Kim had worked his way up from nothing to become one of the most respected diplomats in the galaxy. He had never denied Tae-won anything important: the best schools, the finest clothes, vacations to exotic planets. But this time had been different. "A man defines himself by what he earns, not what he's given," Jun had said quietly. "I'm not refusing because I can't afford it. I'm refusing because I want more for you than to be one of those empty-headed rich kids who never accomplish anything." The memory made Tae-won's face burn. Who was his father to judge him? Jun had grown up in a different time, when people still had to struggle. Modern society had evolved beyond that. Back at home, a sprawling apartment that took up the entire top floor of the tallest building in New Seoul, Tae-won found a message waiting for him. His father's face appeared, looking tired after a day of preparation for his diplomatic mission. "Ta-1, I've just been notified of your lawsuit." Jun's voice was calm, but his eyes revealed his hurt. "I never thought you would take things this far. I'll be leaving for Centauri tomorrow as scheduled. When I return, we'll discuss this like adults. I hope by then you'll have reconsidered. Remember, son, there are consequences to every action." Tai-1 deleted the message without replying. He walked to the window wall of his room and pressed a button, making the glass transparent. The city spread out below him, and above, the stars shone brightly. Among them, he could see the faint blue streak of a Nebula X-300 cutting through the night sky. "Soon," he whispered to himself, ignoring the small voice in the back of his mind that sounded suspiciously like doubt. Very soon. News of Tai-1's lawsuit spread faster than a quantum transmission. By morning, every screen in New Seoul displayed his face alongside his father's. Local channels ran special reports with titles like "Diplomat's Son Demands Stars" and "Generation Gap Goes to Court." By afternoon, the story had jumped to global networks. By evening, it had reached the colonies on Mars and Europa. And by the next morning, even alien news services were covering what they called the human entitlement case. Tai-1 sat in the Elite Academy cafeteria, picking at his lunch while pretending not to notice the stares. He scrolled through his personal feed, watching his social reputation score drop in real time. It had fallen 20 points since yesterday. Across from him, Sung-Ho Lee lowered his voice. "Your popularity metrics are dropping like a rock. Everyone's talking about it." "Let them talk," Tai-1 replied, though the attention made him uncomfortable. He hadn't expected quite this level of public interest. "The comments are pretty harsh," Sung-Ho continued, showing Tai-1 his tablet. "Look at this one. While people starve in the outer colonies, Diplomat's son throws tantrum over luxury spacecraft." Tai-1 shrugged. "When I'm flying my new starcraft, none of that will matter." But privately, he felt the first real pangs of doubt. He had expected some attention, maybe even admiration for his boldness. Instead, many of his classmates were avoiding him. Even some teachers looked at him differently. That afternoon, his personal communication device buzzed with a message from an unfamiliar source. It was a marketing representative from Stellar Craft Industries, the makers of the Nebula X-300. "Mr. Kim," the sleek woman in the message began, "your case has brought unprecedented attention to our flagship product. We would like to discuss an endorsement opportunity." Tai-1 shut off the message. At least someone saw the positive side of his stance. At the diplomatic quarters across the city, the Morian delegation was following the case with particular interest. The Morians, tall beings with iridescent skin that shifted colors with their emotions, valued family hierarchy above almost all else in their culture. To them, the idea of a child challenging a parent through legal means was both fascinating and disturbing. Ambassador Cole, the head of the Morian delegation, requested a private meeting with Jung Kim before his departure for the Centauri peace talks. "This legal challenge from your offspring," Ambassador Cole said, his skin pulsing with curious blues and surprised oranges. "It is permitted in your culture." June nodded wearily. "It is legal, yes, though very uncommon. In Morian society, such a challenge would result in immediate family expulsion." Cole noted, watching June carefully. "Your response is remarkably measured." "He's my son," Jun said simply. "He's making a mistake, but he's still my son." The ambassador's skin rippled with a thoughtful purple. "We will watch this case with great interest. It may influence our understanding of human family bonds." What neither June nor Tai-1 realized was how closely the Morians were tying this case to ongoing trade negotiations between their species. Back at school, Tai-1 was surprised when Ji-Hoo, the most popular girl in his year, sat down next to him in the library. "Bold move with the lawsuit," she said, her tone making it unclear whether she approved. "Someone had to test the statute," Tai-1 replied, trying to sound confident. Ji-Hoo studied him. My father says your father is one of the few honest diplomats in the sector. He says Jung Kim could have been rich 100 times over if he took the bribes others take. Tae-won shifted uncomfortably. This isn't about my father's career. It's about what I'm entitled to as his son. Entitled, Jae-hoo repeated, the word hanging between them. Interesting choice of words. She stood up. Good luck with your case. I hope it gives you what you really need. Before Tae-won could ask what she meant, she was gone. That evening, Tae-won's attorney informed him that his father had left for the Centauri system as scheduled, refusing all settlement offers despite pressure from the diplomatic corps to end the embarrassing situation quickly. He left a message stating he will contest the case fully upon his return, JD7 reported. He has also restricted your access to family accounts pending resolution. He can't do that. Tae-won protested. Actually, he can. The I replied. The same statute you invoked gives him the right to limit financial access once legal proceedings have begun. Tae-won stared out at the night sky, feeling suddenly alone in the large apartment. His communication device had been unusually quiet all day. Even Sung-ho and his other regular friends seemed to be keeping their distance. A news alert caught his attention. On screen, a reporter stood outside the Judicial Center. The case has sparked debate across human settlements, the reporter was saying. Many young people see Kim Tae-won as championing the rights of dependents, while others view the lawsuit as the ultimate example of privileged entitlement. Stellar Craft Industries reports a surge in interest in their Nebula X300, though public opinion polls show 70% of respondents side with Ambassador Kim. Tae-won turned off the screen. 70% against him. How was that possible? He had simply invoked his legal rights. He walked to his father's study, a room he rarely entered, and looked around at the simple furnishings. Unlike the rest of their lavish apartment, this room was modest. The only luxury was a wall of actual paper books, antiques from Earth. Tae-won ran his fingers along their spines, stopping at one titled, The Measure of a Person. He pulled it out and opened to a page his father had marked. A line was underlined. We are defined not by what we take, but by what we give back. For the first time since filing the lawsuit, Tae-won wondered if he might have made a terrible mistake. The date for the trial approached quickly. With public opinion turning against him, Tae-won spent more time at home, avoiding the whispers and stares at school. GD7, his AI attorney, insisted they needed more information to build a stronger case. Your father's legal team will argue that his refusal is based on parental wisdom and financial responsibility, the AI explained, hovering beside Tae-won in the living room. We need to counter that narrative. Tae-won nodded, staring out at the skyline of New Seoul. What do you suggest? Access to Ambassador Kim's personal files might reveal spending patterns that contradict his claims about financial restraint. If he regularly makes luxury purchases for himself while denying you, it strengthens our position. Tae-won hesitated. Accessing his father's private files felt wrong, crossing a line even he hadn't considered. But his pride was at stake now. Too many people were watching. Too many people thought he was wrong. Can you get into his home system? He asked. His diplomatic clearance creates certain barriers, JD7 replied. However, as a family member with residence access, you can authorize a search for relevant financial records. That night, Tae-won used his father's study terminal. As the son of the household, his biometrics granted basic access. GD7 guided him through the process of searching for financial records, but what they found wasn't what they expected. These spending patterns are unusual for someone of Ambassador Kim's status, JD7 noted. His personal expenses are minimal. However, there are regular, substantial transfers to multiple accounts. Tae-won frowned. Where is the money going? The largest transfers go to Mining Colony K-12. Recipients include educational foundations, medical facilities, and a family named Kim. Tae-won's heart skipped. Search for information on K-12. The screen filled with images of a bleak asteroid colony. K-12 was one of the oldest mining outposts in the system, known for dangerous conditions and high mortality rates. The companies that owned it extracted valuable minerals while investing little in worker safety or comfort. "Now search my father's biographical history," Taiwan said quietly. His early life. The official biography was brief. Jun Kim, born on Earth, educated at Seoul National University and the Diplomatic Academy. "That can't be right," Taiwan muttered. "Search deeper. Access his personal archives." G7 hesitated. "That would exceed your authorized access level." "Do it anyway," Taiwan ordered. Minutes later, the screen displayed a different story altogether. Birth records from mining colony K-12. School records that ended at age 12. Employment records with Kim Mining Corporation, starting the same year his education ended. "He was born there," Taiwan whispered. "Why would he hide this?" JD7 processed the new information. It appears Ambassador Kim has constructed a more socially acceptable personal history for his diplomatic career. But Taiwan wasn't listening. He had found a folder of old photographs, actual digital scans of physical pictures. He opened the first one and froze. The image showed a boy, no older than 12, standing at the entrance to a mining tunnel. He wore oversized safety gear that couldn't hide how thin he was. His face was streaked with dark asteroid dust, but his eyes. Taiwan recognized those eyes. They were his father's eyes, and in some ways, his own. The next image showed the same boy, a little older, standing beside a hospital bed where a woman lay, connected to medical equipment. A handwritten note was attached to the image. "Mom's third treatment. Payment confirmed." Taiwan kept scrolling through the images, each telling part of a story he had never known. His father as a teenager, working with dangerous mining equipment. His father receiving a small education certificate. His father standing with two young girls, aunts Taiwan had never met. Then he found a death certificate. Kim Sung-min died in mining tunnel collapse. K-12 Sector 7. Father of Jun Kim. "His father died in the mines," Taiwan said softly. "My grandfather." Another document appeared. A financial record showing regular payments from young Jun's mining salary to a family account, leaving almost nothing for himself. Year after year, the pattern continued. Taiwan stared at an image of young Jun covered in asteroid dust, sending his meager earnings to support his mother and sisters. For the first time, doubt crept into his mind. He opened another folder and found more recent images. Children on K-12 receiving educational tablets. A new medical facility opening. Young people boarding shuttles with scholarship certificates in hand. All funded by his father. He's been sending money back, Taiwan realized. Not just to family, but to help everyone there. GD7 analyzed the financial patterns. Ambassador Kim allocates approximately 60% of his income to these charitable endeavors. His personal spending is among the lowest in the diplomatic corps despite his senior position. Taiwan slumped in his father's chair, feeling suddenly small. All this time, he had assumed the luxury of their apartment. His education, their lifestyle was simply what people like them deserved. He had never considered where his father came from or what it took to create this life. "What about my request for the Nebula X-300? Taiwan asked quietly. G7 projected a calculation. The cost would equal approximately 1 year of educational funding for 27 children on K-12. Taiwan closed his eyes. He saw again the image of his father as a boy, covered in asteroid dust, eyes tired beyond his years. How many hours had young Jun worked in those dangerous tunnels? How many times had he gone without so his family could have enough? "Display my personal spending report for the past year," Taiwan requested. The numbers that appeared made him wince. Clothing, entertainment, gadgets that he used once and discarded. The total was staggering, and all of it provided without question by his father. Taiwan stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the sparkling lights of New Seoul. Somewhere up there, his father was traveling between stars, working to maintain peace between worlds. And here he was, suing the man who had climbed out of the darkness of those mining tunnels to give his son everything he himself had never had. GD7. Todd 1 said finally, his voice barely above a whisper, "I think I've made a terrible mistake." The New Seoul Judicial Center was packed beyond capacity on the morning of the trial. News drones hovered outside, broadcasting to billions across the settled worlds. Inside, the gallery seats filled with journalists, legal students, and curious citizens. Most notable was the entire Morian diplomatic delegation, their skin shifting through shades of blue and purple as they observed the proceedings with intense interest. Taiwan sat at one table with GD7 hovering beside him. The AI had argued strongly against withdrawing the case, citing potential precedent and the resources already invested. Taiwan had listened silently, no longer certain of anything. At the other table sat his father, recently returned from the Centauri peace talks. Jun Kim looked tired but composed in his formal diplomatic attire. He had refused legal representation, choosing to speak for himself. When their eyes met across the room, Taiwan quickly looked away, ashamed. Judge Min entered, and the room stood. She was a small woman with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see through pretense. "This is an unusual case," she began after everyone was seated. "The Colonial Dependency Statute has historically been used to ensure basic needs for dependents, not luxury items. However, the law does not specifically exclude such applications, which is why we are here today." She turned to Jun. "Ambassador Kim, as the respondent, you will present your testimony first." Jun approached the witness stand. The courtroom fell silent as he took his seat. The Morian ambassadors watched intently from the gallery, their skin now pulsing with curious yellow patterns. "Ambassador Kim," Judge Min said, "please explain to the court why you have refused to purchase a Nebula X-300 spacecraft for your son." Jun looked directly at Taiwan as he spoke. "I refuse to give my son that starcraft," he testified, "not because I can't afford it, but because true strength comes from earning your place among the stars." He paused, then continued. "When I was Taiwan's age, I had already been working for 5 years in the mining tunnels of K-12. My father died when I was 12, and I became responsible for my mother and sisters." A murmur ran through the courtroom. This was not the biography most people knew for the famous diplomat. "Every credit I earned went to my family's survival. I didn't resent this responsibility. It taught me the value of work and sacrifice. When I finally saved enough to leave K-12 and pursue education, I appreciated every opportunity because I had earned it." Jun's voice remained steady, but Taiwan could hear the emotion behind his words. "I have given my son many advantages I never had. Good food, safe shelter, the best education. I don't regret any of it, but there comes a point where giving becomes harmful rather than helpful. The Nebula X-300 costs more than most families on K-12C in a decade. Giving Taiwan such a luxury without him understanding its value would be a disservice to him as a father." Judge Min nodded. "Thank you, Ambassador. Mr. Kim, your AI counsel may cross-examine." G7 floated forward. "Ambassador Kim, records show that your diplomatic salary would allow you to purchase the spacecraft without financial strain. Is that correct?" "Yes," Joan answered simply. "And you have never denied your son any significant request before this one, correct?" "That is also correct." "Then what changed? Why is this particular request different?" Jun considered the question. "Because Taiwan is becoming a man now. When he was a child, it was my job to provide everything. As he approaches adulthood, it becomes my job to help him learn to provide for himself. But the law recognizes your obligation to support him fully until age 20, JD7 countered. The law ensures I meet his needs. A luxury spacecraft is not a need. Your own lifestyle includes significant privileges, Ambassador. Is it not hypocritical to deny your son similar advantages? June shook his head. My privileges, as you call them, were earned through decades of work. What message would I send my son if I taught him that simply being born to the right parent entitles him to luxury without effort? The questioning continued, with JD7 trying to paint June as unreasonable, while June remained calm, answering each question with thoughtful simplicity. Throughout, Ta-1 sat in growing discomfort, seeing his father's quiet dignity contrasted with his own petulant demands. Ambassador Kim, JD7 asked finally, would you not agree that in today's society, certain status symbols are important for a young person's social development? I believe character is more important than possessions, Jun replied. I want my son to be valued for who he is, not what he owns. As JD7 prepared its next question, Ta-1 suddenly stood up. The courtroom fell silent. I wish to address the court, he said, his voice cracking slightly. Judge Min looked surprised but nodded. Proceed, Mr. Kim. Tae-1 stepped forward, his hands trembling. He looked at the Morian delegation, whose skin had turned a curious gold color. He looked at the reporters with their recording devices. He looked at his father, whose expression held no anger, only patient love. I wish to withdraw my lawsuit, he announced, his voice steady despite his trembling hands. I was wrong to bring this case. GD7 spun toward him. Client Kim, this is highly irregular. We have a strong legal position. Deactivate, Ta-1 said quietly, and the AI fell silent, hovering motionless beside him. Are you certain of this decision? Judge Min asked. Yes, Your Honor. Ta-1 took a deep breath. I recently learned things about my father, about his past, that I never knew before, about where he came from and what he overcame, about how he spends his money helping others instead of on himself. Tae-1 looked directly at his father now. I thought I was entitled to whatever I wanted simply because my father could afford it. I never stopped to think about the difference between wants and needs, or about what true privilege really is. A single tear slid down his cheek, but he continued. The privilege isn't having a father who buys you expensive things. The privilege is having a father who cares enough to say no when saying yes would be easier. The courtroom remained silent as Ta-1 bowed deeply to the judge, then to his father. Case withdrawn, Judge Min declared, striking her gavel once. Court dismissed. As people began filing out, the lead Morian ambassador approached June. His skin glowed with a warm orange that few humans had ever seen on a Morian. We have observed something important today, the ambassador said. Perhaps humans understand true value better than we thought. The blue-purple rings of Moria Prime filled the view screen as Ta-1 guided the shuttle toward the planet's surface. It wasn't the sleek Nebula X-300 he had once demanded, but the standard-issue diplomatic transport felt right beneath his hands. 6 months had changed many things. Coming up on atmospheric entry, Ta-1 announced, glancing at his father in the co-pilot's seat. Trajectory looks good. June nodded, pride evident in his eyes. Smooth flying. You've learned quickly. After the trial, Ta-1 had expected anger, or at least a lecture. Instead, his father had simply asked, "What do you want to do now?" The question had surprised him. It wasn't about punishment, but about moving forward. "I want to understand," Ta-1 had answered. "About K-12. About your work. About everything." The months that followed had been transformative. Ta-1 applied for a part-time position at the Interstellar Communications Array, routing diplomatic messages across the settled systems. The work was basic but important, ensuring that peace talks, trade negotiations, and emergency communications reached their destinations without delay. His first paycheck had seemed small, almost insignificant compared to his former allowance, but he had earned it. Every credit represented his time, his effort, his growing skills. He saved most of it, watching the balance grow slowly but steadily. Atmospheric interface in 30 seconds, the shuttle's computer announced, pulling Ta-1 back to the present. The craft began to shake slightly as it hit the upper layers of Moria Prime's dense atmosphere, compensating for density variation, Ta-1 said, adjusting the shuttle's descent path. His father watched but didn't interfere. This trip was a milestone, the first time Jun had invited his son to join an official diplomatic mission. The Morian government had specifically requested Ta-1's presence, much to his surprise. They were impressed by your actions at the trial, Jun had explained. In Morian culture, publicly acknowledging one's errors is considered a sign of exceptional character. The shuttle broke through the cloud layer, revealing the sprawling capital city of Moria Prime. Unlike human cities with their vertical towers, Morian architecture spread horizontally in concentric rings, each building connected to others in intricate patterns that mirrored their social structure. Tai-1 guided the shuttle toward the central landing platform, where a welcome delegation waited. The craft settled onto the pad with barely a bump. Perfect landing, Jun said, unstrapping his harness. Ready for your first official diplomatic function. Tai-1 nodded, suddenly nervous. 6 months ago, his biggest concern had been impressing his friends with a luxury spacecraft. Now he was representing Earth on an alien world. The Morian welcome delegation included 5 senior officials, their skin shifting through formal patterns of blue and gold. At their center stood Elder Cole, the highest-ranking Morian to ever greet a human delegation. Ambassador Kim, Elder Cole said, his translator converting the musical Morian language into standard Earth dialect. And young Kim Ta-1, we welcome you to our homeworld. The formal greetings continued as they moved inside the reception building. Tai-1 followed his father's lead, bowing at the correct moments and speaking only when addressed directly. He had studied Morian protocols extensively, determined not to embarrass Earth or his father. During the welcoming ceremony, Elder Cole surprised everyone by addressing Tai-1 directly. Your arrival method interests us, the elder said. Many young diplomats arrive in personal vessels of great ostentation. Yet you piloted a standard shuttle. Tai-1 felt every eye in the room turned to him. 6 months ago, he would have been embarrassed by the observation. Now he understood it was an opportunity to demonstrate human values. The vessel you fly matters less than your destination. The Morian elder continued, his skin rippling with approval at the simple craft. Tai-1 nodded respectfully. My father taught me that, he replied, appreciating the lesson that had nearly cost them both everything. The purpose of our journey is to build understanding between our worlds. The shuttle serves that purpose perfectly. Elder Cole's skin shifted to a deep purple that Jun later explained was the Morian expression of profound respect. Perhaps there is wisdom in your youth after all. This bodes well for our negotiations. Later, after the formal reception, Jun and Tai-1 were shown to their quarters in the diplomatic residence. Through the curved window, they could see both of Moria Prime's moons rising over the horizon. You did well today, Jun said quietly. The Morians value authenticity above all else. They can sense when someone is pretending to be something they're not. Tai-1 thought about how much had changed. 6 months ago, I was pretending all the time, pretending that material things were what mattered. Jun placed a hand on his son's shoulder. We all learn and grow. That's the purpose of life. I never asked. Tai-1 said hesitantly, what happened to that mining colony? To K-12. To your family there. Jun's eyes grew distant. My mother passed away 10 years ago. My sisters both left K-12 eventually. One lives on Mars now, the other on Europa. They both have families of their own. And the colony itself, still operating. Conditions are better now than in my time, but it remains a hard place to live. That's why I fund the education programs, to help young people find options beyond the mines. Tai-1 hesitated, then asked the question that had been on his mind for months. Could we visit someday? I'd like to see where you grew up. Surprise and emotion crossed Jun's face. Yes, I think that could be arranged. After this mission concludes. The next morning, As they prepared for the first round of trade negotiations, Ta-1 received a message on his personal communicator. It was from the Morian youth ambassador, inviting him to a separate meeting with young Morians interested in human culture. "They want to know about your experience," the message explained, "about how humans learn to value what truly matters." Ta-1 looked at the message for a long moment, thinking about everything that had brought him to this point. The lawsuit, the discovery, the withdrawal, the work he'd done since. He glanced at the simple shuttle visible through the window, purchased with his own earnings. It wasn't a Nebula X-300. It would never impress his old friends at the elite academy. But it had brought him across the stars to a place where he could make a difference. Sometimes, he reflected, the greatest journeys weren't measured in light years, but in understanding. His father had traveled from the mines of K-12 to become a voice for peace among the stars. Perhaps his own journey was just beginning. Ta-1 typed his reply to the Morian youth ambassador. "I would be honored to share what I've learned about true value."